One of the most fascinating things to me, honestly, is how quickly Prince Harry seemed to fall under Meghan's spell. It wasn't gradual, it was sudden, intense, and complete. And I've been there. That moment when someone walks into your life and it feels like they just get you. But later you realize they were just studying you. So when I look at how Meghan may have used publicly available information to mirror Harry's values and fast track their connection, I'm not doing it to be petty. I'm doing it because I want to understand the pattern. Because if I can understand how the trap is set, maybe I can make sure I never fall into it again. So let's take a look at what Harry's image looked like just before Meghan entered the picture and how that could have been the perfect script for a love bomb. But before we begin, here's the intro. Welcome to Revealing the Narc. Join me as I highlight narcissistic traits in celebrities and public figures. Everything here is in my opinion and not professional advice. If you enjoy the analysis, please like and subscribe. So before we begin, I'm going to ask all of you, drop it in the comments. Do you believe that Meghan studied Prince Harry before she ever met him? And I'm not talking about casually Googling a new date. When I first started this channel, one of the things I would do is I would look at articles from around the time that Harry and Meghan allegedly met. And I would try to look for hints or clues or information that could be used by Meghan to love bomb him. And for the purposes of those videos, I would just talk about the article and assume that that is the only information that's available. So I think that's important because we want to tease out any other extra information that might be out there. Before we get into the article, though, I want to talk about something that applies to everyone watching this, not just royals and celebrities. One of the most important things you can do when you first meet someone, especially someone new and exciting, is not reveal too much too soon. It's really tempting because you want to connect and you want to be open. Maybe you feel like you're finally being seen, but the truth is, when you overshare early on, you're not just bonding, you're handing that person a roadmap of your emotional core. And if they're a narcissist or on this cluster B personalities, or they display a lot of narcissistic characteristics, they'll study that map like a playbook. They'll mirror your values, they'll echo your language, and they'll become your perfect match. Not because it's real, but because it's effective. So if you imagine your entire life, your likes, dislikes, values, traumas were available online, like Prince Harry was back in 2016, and if someone like Meghan was paying attention, and I believe she was, then love bombing him really wouldn't have been that hard. It would be as easy as reading the headlines. As I was saying earlier, for the purpose of this video, we are going to assume that this article is the only piece of information that Meghan had before she met him. Nothing more about his past, nothing more about his present. The article is titled Britain's Prince Harry to Visit Nepal in March 2016. Britain's Prince Harry will be coming to Nepal on an official visit, Kensington Palace said. And this article was published February 25, 2016. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the parts of it that I think could have been used by someone to manipulate someone else. The first thing that we see is that he will be coming to Nepal, and this is his first visit to Nepal, and it's an official visit. It says in this article also he is going to carry out 4 days of official engagements at the request of Her Majesty's government. And he will meet with the April 2015 earthquake victims and also learn about restoration processes. I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong, but he's prepared to meet President Bidya Devi Bhandari and carry out trekking in one of the national parks in Nepal. Prince Harry is really looking forward to his trip. It is a country he has long wanted to visit, and he's eager to learn more about their country and culture. And then finally, it closes with Prince Harry will experience the strength of the relationship and traditional warmth of the Nepali welcome. Okay, let's get into the analysis. The palace said that Harry had been, in quotation marks, moved by the stories of resilience of the Nepali people and wanted to learn more about their culture. I think if you read something like this, it positions Harry as someone that's deeply empathetic, an emotionally responsive man. He's not just doing royal duty, he's choosing to connect with suffering, and that's a huge clue. Now, again, we are taking this all at face value. We have since learned a lot more about Harry's personality, and I'm not going to get into that. But for the purpose of this video, our goal is to try to figure out what kind of information can be used and how it can be manipulated so that we don't fall for these traps. So, how would a narcissist use that type of information, finding out that someone is deeply empathetic and emotionally responsive? They would mirror that empathy. So, in this case, Megan could present herself as someone that's more than just a humanitarian. She worked in soup kitchens, she advocates for women's rights, she helps the poor, she's done so much work, and essentially, she's creating emotional alignment. She appears like minded, spiritually in tune, and not like other actresses. So, for you and I, how could this look like in a romantic relationship that's new? The narcissist might love bomb harder because if they know that you're emotionally responsive, they may overwhelm you with intense affection early on. They may say things like, I've never felt this way about anyone. I can already see us growing old together. And this would be said very early, like on the second date. The reason that this would be considered love bombing is because the goal of love bombing is to create intimacy where intimacy is not deserved. So, how could someone know that they're ready to grow old with you and they're only on a second date with you? It just doesn't add up. The second thing a narcissist may do in a romantic relationship when they know that there's empathy involved, they could use emotional wounds to bond. They could get you to open up about your pain and then mirror it back to you, creating this false sense of intimacy. You tell them, for example, about a toxic ex, and suddenly they also had a traumatic relationship and they totally understand your pain. They may also exploit forgiveness. They mess up, but they know you'll be quick to understand, rationalize, or give second chances. For example, after yelling at you, they cry and say, I just love you so much. I was afraid of losing you. The trap here is that you end up confusing emotional chaos with emotional depth, and you keep chasing the, in quotation marks, real version of them that only existed in the love bombing phase. Let's also look at this using of empathy by someone that's approaching you as a friend. They may trauma dump early on you. They unload all their problems to hook you into this caretaker role from day one. So, for example, you just met and they're sharing childhood trauma over coffee, and you feel too guilty to back away. They also would expect emotional labor on demand. They treat you like their therapist, but disappear when you need support. For example, you text them when you're down, they leave you on red, and the next day they need you to talk them through a breakup. And they could play the constant victim. They use pity to keep the attention and sympathy flowing. For example, they may say to you, no one ever shows up for me like you do. You're the only one who understands me. And the translation of that is, you're now emotionally responsible for them. The trap here is that you feel bad pulling away because they've made it seem like you're their lifeline. The common thread between these two scenarios is that empathy is a gift, but when you're with a narcissist, they use it like a weapon, not to connect, but to control. And knowing this isn't about shutting down emotionally, it's about learning to protect your empathy with boundaries. Okay, so let's go on to the next topic. So, in the article, we also hear that Harry has long wanted to visit Nepal. That's important because it tells us that Harry isn't just reactive. He has a sense of purpose and personal longing, a desire to connect with something meaningful. And this is where the Love Bomb script gets interesting because Megan could easily claim she also dreamed of visiting Nepal. Or she could say she was fascinated by Eastern cultures, maybe even practiced mindfulness or yoga rooted in that part of the world. Whether true or not, the goal is to craft this like shared dream, and it creates this illusion of faith. So, how could this look in your life if you are approached romantically? You could share with someone, I've always dreamed of living somewhere quiet and traveling the world. I want to build a life that's more about purpose than pressure. And the narcissist would mirror it back and say, oh my gosh, me too. I've always wanted to just pack up, live simply, and find something more meaningful than the rat race. And then later, they get irritated when you bring up travel or living in simplicity, and they start pushing their agenda instead. It turns out they never wanted that life, they just knew it would hook you. This is actually something that happened to me in my marriage with my ex husband. So I know there are a lot of new people here, and I want to thank you so much, all of you new subscribers. I just feel so much love from every single one of you. My ex husband is a narcissist. And I didn't realize it until after I separated. But in the beginning, before I met him, it was weird. Like I had decided I wanted to be single, I wanted to move to New York, I wanted to live in the city, and eventually I wanted to adopt children. And I met him and I shared this dream with him. He had children. So he would sell me this image of like, in the future, we could live together and these children would be like your children. It's just like adopting. Now, I recognize there's a large difference between being an adopted mother or an adoptive mother and being a stepmom. But for me at the time, it felt right. It felt nice to be able to be around children and have children in my life. If any of this connects with you, please drop it in the comments if you feel comfortable. So, how could this also look in a friendship? You could share with a new friend, oh, I've been thinking a lot about getting into healing work, maybe becoming a therapist or energy healer. I just want to help people. And then the narcissist new friend might respond and say, that's that's bonkers. I've literally been looking into the same thing. I feel like we were meant to meet. We're on the same journey. And then later, they dominate every conversation about healing. They turn it into a competition, or they subtly belittle your progress while talking up theirs. This shared dream you had becomes a one sided performance. The trap in both of these situations is that narcissists use your deepest longings to build this illusion of alignment. But once you're attached, they undermine and dismiss those very dreams. They don't share your vision. They never actually shared your vision. They shape shifted to secure your trust, and then they revealed the real agenda later. We also read in this article that Harry will be trekking in one of Nepal's national parks. So now we have another layer. Now we know a little bit about how Harry is adventurous, outdoorsy, grounded. He's not just this flashy prince. He likes the mountains, he likes peace. And that's when Megan could come in and say, I do yoga, I meditate, I make green juice. This persona becomes incredibly convenient because suddenly she's this down to earth girl who just happens to love nature, who wants to escape the spotlight for simplicity. And he buys it because it fits the narrative he already sees in himself. This is essentially mirroring. And I know I've used that word earlier in this video or a couple of times during this video, but let's look at it a little bit further. So, what narcissists will do is they'll study you and see what lights you up, and then they reflect it back to you with the goal of creating this fast track bond. But it's not a genuine connection, it's emotional bait. So, for example, you might say, I'm really into indie films, especially weird psychological thrillers. And in a romantic relationship, this person could say, me too. That's literally my favorite genre. It leads you to feel seen, understood. Finally, someone gets you. But weeks later, you realize they don't actually know any of the directors you love. And every time you watch something together, they're glued to their phone. In a friendship, this could look like you start saying, I've been really obsessed with studying about Meghan Markle and narcissism. It's really helping me understand my childhood. And they could turn around and be like, me too. So you bond over it fast, but eventually they start positioning themselves as the expert and they invalidate your intuitive insights. This could also happen in work or collaboration. So you could say something like, I've always wanted to create something meaningful, like a podcast that helps people heal. And they say, that's wild. I've been planning to do something similar. We should team up. They ride your enthusiasm, your vision, and then they take credit, they ghost you, or they try to take control. Now, what I'm going to talk about next, it's very difficult because basically, any information you give can be used against you. So, how do you protect yourself from this? The first is pace yourself disclosure. Don't share everything up front. Let people earn deeper insight into what matters to you. And pay attention. It's a red flag if someone reflects too much too fast. It might be a performance and not a coincidence. The second is watch for follow through. Do they actually engage in the interest or are they just repeating what you said to keep you hooked? For example, they say they love hiking, but they never plan or show up for one. The words do not align with what they actually do. The third thing is to let time reveal consistency. Real compatibility holds up over time. Mirroring fades when it's not authentic. Ask yourself, are they still into the things I love once the bond is formed, or did the interest vanish once they had me emotionally? And a fourth thing you can do is notice who leads the conversation. Are they constantly deferring to your interests to stay in your orbit, or do they eventually start inserting control, superiority, or passive competition? The bottom line is genuine connection feels mutual, grounded, and curious. Mirroring feels magical at first, but it comes with this pressure to bond fast, share more, and stay attached. If someone matches you too perfectly too soon, pause. It might not be a match, it might be a mirror. The last thing I want to look at from this article is where it says that Prince Harry was looking forward to the traditional warmth of the Nepali welcome. That tells us something huge. Harry wasn't just after royal obligations or surface level appearances, he was craving something real. Real people, real culture, real emotion. So, what does a narcissist do when they sense that? They become the embodiment of realness, not because it's who they are, because it's what you want to see. So, how may have Megan used this with Harry? Harry didn't want glitz and glam. He wanted grounded, simple, and meaningful. So Megan shows up as the barefoot girl who loves to cook, the one who didn't Google him, the woman who values authenticity over attention, the one who shops at farmer's market and meditates in the morning. And it worked. She fit the fantasy. One thing that I immediately remembered was when, and I'm sorry if I get the facts kind of messed up, but you guys will get the big picture of what I'm trying to say. So there came a point that King Charles told his son Harry that maybe it would be better if Meghan worked because there's not that much money available for them, and I don't remember exactly the details. And in spare, Harry said something like, Megan's not that expensive. She can make her own clothes. He believed that illusion. He believed that she didn't want glitz and glam, that she was simple and grounded. Well, at this point, we're what, 9 years on? We know that's not what Megan is or wants. This is what she pretended to be. And she could have used articles like this to try to figure out that that was Harry's preference. And this is all just allegedly and in my opinion. So, how could this show up in your life? In dating, you may say to someone, I'm so over people who are just performative. I want something low key and real. And they say, that's literally me. I don't care about status or attention. I just want to be with someone who's real. They start sending you cozy selfies in sweatpants. They talk about how fame and flashiness don't matter. Meanwhile, they're posting edited selfies for validation the minute you're not looking. In friendships, you may be vulnerable and say, I've always felt out of place in groups. I just want one or two close friends who feel like home. And they say, same, I hate cliques. I just want people who are real and raw with me. At first, they show up with deep conversations, shared playlists, wine nights. Then they start love bombing you and your social circle, trying to be in the center of it all. It was never about being real, it was about being adored. So, how can we tell if it's a real person or if it's a persona? Real people have contradictions. They don't perfectly reflect your values. They overlap with them, but not in a way that feels copy and paste. Authenticity unfolds slowly. It doesn't arrive fully formed in week one. Curated people often overcorrect. So if you say you're turned off by attention seekers, they'll work extra hard to seem grounded. Narcissists don't mirror your surface, they mirror your longing, and that's what makes it dangerous. So, some final thoughts. When someone says they're just being themselves, but that self happens to look exactly like you or exactly what you've dreamed of, that's maybe not a coincidence. That could be curation. Harry wanted something real, and Meghan gave him, in quotation marks, realness, but it was bottled and branded. And when the mask slips, what's left behind isn't warmth, it's control. So, did Megan study Prince Harry before she met him? In my opinion, absolutely. And this 2016 article shows just how easy it would have been to construct the perfect persona to reel him in. So, I'm curious to know what you all think about all of this. I know there are thoughts that Harry and Meghan met a long time before 2016, but again, we're taking this article and this whole story at face value because we're using it as a teachable moment for ourselves. The last thing I want is to fall into this trap again. I know that I'm vulnerable because of my empathy, and these are life lessons for me as well. And I mean, I hope that they're helping all of you too. So let me know, do you think this was all a coincidence or was Megan already playing the long game? Let me know also if you found this video interesting. I think I've done 3 other ones like this before, but it was so early on in my when I started this channel, so they may not be so polished, and I was a newbie. I mean, I'm still a newbie, and I hope that my videos are just getting better and better. Um, that's the goal, right? To always try to improve. If you found this video interesting, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you'll know every time I drop a new video. I want to thank you all so much for listening, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye, everybody.